Picture this. I am an old man now, sitting by a flickering hearth in some forgotten corner of 14th century Europe, telling the story of a life cursed from the beginning, a tale of blood screams and a family curse that even the devil would beg to avoid. I was born in 14th century Europe into what people called a cursed bloodline. Not cursed enough to die young, not blessed enough to escape my fate. Just stuck in the middle of nowhere with a destiny even the devil begs to pass on. My mother spent her days praying for my soul before I even knew I needed saving. My father was always gone doing work that made grown men wet themselves with fear. Then I reached age 2. Congratulations. I had beaten the plague and starvation, but surviving childhood might have been the worst thing that ever happened to me. By age 4, I started noticing the whispers. People did not just avoid our house. They made the sign of the cross when they walked past it. My mother never took me to the market. Never let me play with other children. She said it was because of wild animals. I was starting to think the real animals walked on 2 legs and threw rocks at our windows. Have you ever wondered what would happen if curiosity led you to a secret so horrifying that it changed everything forever? One day, curiosity killed more than just the cat. I sneaked out to the village square and saw a crowd gathered around a wooden platform. There were screams begging the smell of blood and fear, and there, holding a strange metal device, was a man in a dark hood. The crowd parted when he walked by, some spitting, others just staring in horror. That was when I saw it, my father's face under that hood. That night I cornered him. My father sat me down, pulled off his gloves. His hands were scarred and stained, and told me the truth that would haunt every dream I would ever have. My father was a torturer. When someone stole bread, spoke against the Lord, or looked at a priest wrong, they brought him to my father. His job was to hurt them until they confessed to things they might not have even done. But wait, it gets worse. A curse not from a witch, but from our own blood, and now it was mine. But wait, it gets worse. See, nobody applies for this job. Nobody wakes up thinking I would love to spend my life breaking people's fingers for a living, which means there is only one way people become torturers. They are born into it. My grandfather was a torturer, his father before him, and his father's father, you guessed it. This is not just some family business. It is a family curse. And guess what? I just inherited it. I had dreams once. Maybe becoming a farmer growing things instead of destroying them. Maybe a merchant traveling to far-off places where nobody knows my name. Maybe even a priest saving souls instead of damning my own. But none of that matters now. The city will not let me do anything else. I am marked, branded, cursed from birth to follow in my father's bloody footsteps. Are you ready to face the real horror when age 8 marked the start of my own hell on earth? Age 8 training began. And by training, I mean learning how to clean up after human suffering. I started by sharpening the tools. Pliers for pulling teeth screws, for crushing thumbs ropes for the strappado. Each tool had a purpose. Each purpose involved screaming. Before I could touch human flesh, my father tossed me a pile of animal bones, pig, femurs, goat ribs, cow skulls. Break them clean, he commanded. Understand how muscles, sinews, and bone react under strain. I spent weeks cracking livestock remains, learning the precise pressure needed to shatter without killing. The stench of rotting meat clung to my clothes as I mastered this grotesque craft on dead animals first. I learned to oil the rack so it did not squeak when it stretched people apart. I cleaned blood off stone floors until my hands were raw, scrubbing with buckets of vinegar. The only thing that cut through the overwhelming reek of sweat, feces, blood, and decomposing flesh that clung to dungeon stones. The acidic smell burned my nostrils, but it was better than the alternative stench of human despair. The smell never left my clothes. Iron blood, fear, sweat, and something else I could not name, but it made my stomach turn. My mother tried washing my clothes 3 times, but that smell, it was not coming out ever. In the 9th month, my father decided I was ready to watch. But was I truly prepared for the screams that would echo in my head forever? In the 9th month, my father decided I was ready to watch. A man was brought in, accused of stealing grain during harvest. He was crying, begging, swearing on his mother's grave that he was innocent. My father did not care. Innocent or guilty, my father's job was to make the man confess. That is what the law wanted: confession. My father started with the thumb screws, small metal devices that looked harmless until they started crushing bone. The man's screams were so loud I thought my ears might bleed. I wanted to look away, but my father was watching me, making sure I did not flinch. This was my future. This was what I would do every day for the rest of my life. The man confessed after his third finger broke. He admitted to stealing grain he never stole, named people who did not exist just to make the pain stop. Another successful day at the office. You think age 12 is for playing, but for me it was the time to take the pliers and face my greatest fear. I was 12 now, and the real education began. My father handed me the pliers and pointed to a prisoner's mouth. "Start with the back teeth," he said casually. "They are easier to grip." I hesitated. The prisoner looked at me with desperate eyes. My father's hand landed on my shoulder, not a gentle warning. "You do it now, or I do it to you later," he whispered. But there was more to fear than just his wrath. "Cross the church, harm the wrong noble, or let a prisoner die before confession, and they will burn us both alive," he added grimly. I had heard the stories. Torturers who disobeyed orders or showed unauthorized cruelty found themselves on the same pyres they once prepared for heretics. My first tooth extraction took forever. My hands shook. The prisoner passed out from the pain before I was halfway done. My father shook his head. "Sloppy work." "Well, practice until you get it right." And I did practice on prisoner after prisoner until pulling teeth became as natural as brushing my own. Age 15 brought lessons that showed me pain does not always need cuts. Sometimes fear is more effective. Age 15 brought anatomy lessons. I learned where to cut for maximum pain without killing. How long someone could hang before their shoulders popped out. How many turns of the rack it took to make someone beg. I discovered that fear was often more effective than pain. Sometimes, just showing someone the tools made them talk. The human imagination filled in all the terrible ideas I did not even have to mention. At 17, my father introduced me to the Iron Maiden, a human-shaped metal sarcophagus full of inward-facing spikes, and I was about to learn how to make it cause prolonged suffering. My father introduced me to the Iron Maiden, a human-shaped metal sarcophagus bristling with inward-facing spikes. Each spike pierced limbs, shoulders, thighs. Never vital organs, he explained, demonstrating on a screaming victim. The art was in prolonged suffering, not swift death. I learned to operate it with surgical precision, knowing exactly which spikes to engage for different types of confessions. By 17, I was ready for the rack, the king of torture devices. But could I keep them on the edge between confessing and dying? By 17, I was ready for the rack, the king of torture devices. A wooden frame that stretched people like clay. "Listen to their breathing," my father explained. "When it gets ragged, ease off. When they start talking, tighten more. Keep them right on the edge between confessing and dying." My first solo session at 18. A woman accused of witchcraft because a neighbor's cow died. And I had to prove my methods were blessed by God with boiling oil. My first solo lesson came at 18. A woman accused of being a witch because her neighbor's cow died. I started gentle, just showing her the tools. She denied everything. But before I could proceed, I was accused of showing unauthorized mercy. The church demanded proof of my divine sanction. I was forced to undergo trial by ordeal, plunging my hand into boiling oil to prove my methods were blessed by God. The searing agony reminded me that even torturers were not above suspicion. When my wounds healed cleanly, I was deemed worthy to continue, thumbscrews still denying. Then I hung her by her arms for an hour. Finally, I mentioned her children. Shame they had to be questioned too. Children are so fragile. She confessed within minutes. Admitted to flying on broomsticks, dancing with the devil, cursing crops. All lies, but effective lies. The crowd that watched her burn cheered my success. I felt sick. Years passed, and I became disturbingly good. But was the name Bone Breaker a success, or just another curse? Years passed. I got good at my job. Disturbingly good. My reputation spread. They called me the Bone Breaker. I perfected new techniques. Kept detailed notes, like any craftsman. Subject lasted 47 minutes before confession. Recommend different approach next time. But success came with a price. Nobody talked to me except to hire my services. Children ran when they saw me coming. Even priests would not let me sit with normal people. I was necessary, but unwanted. Useful, but unclean. I lived alone at the edge of town. My only companions were the screams that echoed in my head. I drank heavily, but alcohol did not wash away the memories. Women would not marry me, so I found companionship with someone as hated as I was, a brothel worker who understood what it was like to be society's necessary evil. After 20 years of torture, I was the most feared man in 3 counties. My name made criminals weep. I had extracted thousands of confessions, sent hundreds to their deaths. But comfort is relative when your job is inflicting misery. Every night brought nightmares faces of people I had broken voices, begging for mercy I could not give. I woke up screaming more often than my victims did. My wife gave birth to twin boys, bringing the first hope in years. But could a curse allow such hope to last? My wife gave birth to twin boys. For the first time in years, I felt hope. Maybe they could escape this life. But hope is a luxury torturers cannot afford. My hands started shaking at 40. Years of gripping tools took its toll. One day I miscalculated. A prisoner died before confessing. The judge was furious. My reputation took a hit. More mistakes followed. Word spread that the great bone breaker was losing his touch. The only solution was the one I hated most. Passing the curse to my son and watching his innocence die. There was only one solution, and I hated it more than anything. I took my eldest son aside on his 13th birthday. This is our family trade. I told him, watching his face crumble. I did not choose it. My father did not choose it. And neither will you. But if you are going to survive, you need to be better than I ever was, he cried. He begged. He tried to run away, but 3 days later he was back hungry and defeated. There was nowhere to run. The family curse follows you wherever you go. So I began his training, just as my father trained me. I saw in his eyes the same death of innocence I felt all those years ago. The cycle continued. My son learned the trade, mastered the techniques, earned his own reputation. Retirement sounded like freedom, but for me it was just a different prison, where my son's screams reminded me of the legacy I left. I retired to a corner of the house, hands too shaky to work. But retirement was not freedom. It was just a different prison. I listened to screams from below, knowing my son was continuing the family tradition. Every cry reminded me this was my legacy. The curse I passed to another generation. I died at 52, which was old for someone in my profession. Most torturers do not live to see grandchildren. The stress, the drinking, the constant fear of revenge kills them young. But I had been lucky. If you can call any part of this life lucky, but even in my final years, there was no peace. Torturers are feared even in retirement. Villagers believed I was cursed, damned by my bloody trade. When my active service ended, I was quietly exiled to remote regions. Society's way of erasing the shame I represented. Few torturers received pensions or land. Most were relocated far from civilization or executed in secret to prevent their dark knowledge from spreading. My sons buried me in the torturer's corner of the graveyard, far from decent folk even in death. No priest said prayers over my grave. No mourners came to pay respects. Just my family carrying on a tradition that had destroyed every generation for centuries. But at least it was over for me. The nightmares stopped. The guilt ended. The screams finally faded to silence. I had paid my debt to a world that needed someone to do its dirty work, even if it hated me for doing it. My sons, though, their story was just beginning. And somewhere in town, a 4-year-old boy was starting to wonder why people crossed themselves when his family walked by. But here is the glimmer that keeps me from total despair. My youngest boy, the one who watched his brother break, he managed to escape into the night, pursuing a life free from the curse. Perhaps the cycle ends with him.